What if everything you believe about yourself is just a mask? You've been taught to define yourself by your name, your story, your past, your roles, the labels handed to you since birth. But deep inside, there's a quiet knowing. This isn't all that I am. You feel it in the stillness. You feel it when life breaks your routine. You feel it when your old identity starts to crack. Who are you beneath the thoughts, the fears, the performance? You are not your achievements. You are not your trauma. You are not even the voice in your head. You are the one watching it all. In this video, we'll uncover the difference between the ego and your real essence, and why awakening isn't about becoming something new, but remembering what's always been there, untouched, eternal, and whole. Because the truth is, you are not what you think you are. You are so much more. You are not what you think you are. From the moment you were born, the world began to tell you who you are. A name, a gender, a nationality, a story you never chose, but learned to carry. And as the years passed, that story got heavier. You learned how to behave to be accepted. You shaped your voice to match the room. You built an identity from reflections, not from truth. But what if none of that is who you really are? What if everything you've believed about yourself, every label, every role, every mask, was simply the surface of your being, not its essence? What if the person you've been trying to become is actually the one you were taught to be, and not the one you came here to remember? You are not what you think you are. You are not your mind. You are not your emotions. You are not your name, your age, your pain, your status, your body, your role. Those are expressions, temporary costumes, waves on the surface of something much deeper. You are the awareness behind the identity. You are the witness, the presence, the still point that has remained unchanged, even as everything around you and within you has shifted. Have you ever sat in silence long enough to feel it? That moment when your thoughts slow down and something deeper opens? A space within you that doesn't need to prove anything, that doesn't strive or panic or explain. A presence that simply is. That is you, not the version of you that reacts, not the one that performs or pleases, but the one that observes, that watches every thought rise and fall, that senses truth before the mind can name it. Most people spend their lives building a false self, carefully constructed from wounds, expectations, and survival patterns. This self becomes an identity, the achiever, the victim, the rebel, the caretaker. But beneath it all, there is a stillness that holds none of those roles. There is a version of you untouched by story, the one who existed before the world began telling you who to be. And this version is not found in the future. You don't become it. You uncover it through presence, through silence, through the willingness to let go of everything you've clung to for validation and feel what remains when there is nothing left to prove. Have you ever looked into your own eyes, not in vanity, but in truth, and sensed a depth that startled you? That's your essence looking back. That's the real you, rising through the noise. And yet, this isn't about rejecting your personality, your past, or your humanity. It's about seeing them for what they are. Expressions, not definitions. Layers, not limits. They are tools, but they are not the totality. You are not here to become something. You are here to remember what cannot be unmade. You are not your thoughts. You are the sky behind them. You are not your roles. You are the one who plays them and can choose to release them. You are not broken. You are simply buried under layers of forgetting. And now, something deeper is rising. A quiet rebellion, a sacred remembering. This journey, the one you're on right now, is not about fixing yourself. It's about returning to the truth that was never lost, only covered. Because what you truly are, beyond the masks, the pain, the noise, is awareness, light, presence, soul. And that essence doesn't need to be found. It only needs to be felt again. The false self is not born from malice. it is born from need. From the earliest moments of your life, you were immersed in a world that demanded structure, labels, roles, definitions. You were not asked, "Who are you?" You were told. And so, like everyone else, you began to build an identity, a version of you that could survive, belong, and be accepted. At first, this identity is shaped by your family. You become who they need you to be, the quiet one, the strong one, the overachiever, the caretaker. Then school adds another layer, society, another, trauma, yet another, until one day you look in the mirror and see a face that fits, but doesn't feel like home. Have you ever caught yourself saying, "I don't even know who I am anymore"? Have you felt the weight of expectations you didn't consciously choose? Have you noticed the quiet ache that comes from living a life built on should instead of soul? That ache is the call to come back to yourself. The false self isn't evil. It was necessary. It helped you navigate a world that didn't know how to meet your essence. It kept you safe. It gave you a sense of place. But it was never meant to become a prison. This self is built on external reflection. It says, "I am who others think I am. I am how much I achieve. I am what I can control. I am what happened to me." It clings to labels. It thrives on certainty. And above all, it fears dissolution. Because the false self knows that if you ever stop identifying with it, it ceases to exist. That's why awakening feels like death. Because in many ways, it is. It is the death of a version of you that was never real, only reinforced. It is the unraveling of masks that once served a purpose, but now feel suffocating. It is the painful but sacred process of realizing, I've been living someone else's idea of who I am. Have you noticed how exhausting it is to constantly maintain an image? How heavy it feels to perform a role when your soul is longing to rest, to be, to speak honestly? That's not laziness. That's alignment trying to emerge through the cracks. The false self depends on unconscious patterns. It lives through comparison, approval seeking, and control. It resists change because change threatens the structure it has built. It would rather suffer in familiarity than risk the unknown of truth. But there comes a point when the pain of living a lie becomes louder than the fear of letting go. And in that moment, something shifts. You begin to question. You begin to peel back the layers. You begin to ask, not "what should I do?" but "who am I without the doing?" And this is the beginning of freedom. Not the freedom of escape, but the freedom of reconnection. To your essence, to your presence, to the part of you that was never built. Because it simply is. The ego fears this process. It will try to distract you with stories of success and survival. It will remind you of all the reasons you built the mask in the first place. But your soul will keep whispering, you were never the mask. You were always the light behind it. And here's the truth. You don't need to destroy the false self. You only need to stop feeding it, to stop identifying with it, to see it gently, clearly, and say, "Thank you for protecting me, but I don't need you to define me anymore." Because you are not the story you were given. You are not the voice in your head. You are not the version of yourself that learned to shrink to survive. You are something far older, far deeper, far freer. And the moment you choose to unlearn who you were told to be, you begin to remember who you've always been. The ego is not just a psychological structure, it's an energetic mask, a vibrational field you wear, often without realizing it, that filters how you perceive yourself, others, and the world around you. It isn't bad or evil. In truth, the ego was formed to protect you. It emerged from your need to feel safe, seen, and in control. But over time, this protective mechanism becomes a barrier, not just to growth, but to your true self. Think of the ego like a costume worn by the energy body. It wraps itself around your aura, shaping your interactions, dulling your sensitivity, and managing your expression. It creates the illusion that you are your thoughts, you are your pain, you are your roles. But you're not. You are the one beneath it, the presence that exists with or without the mask. Have you ever walked into a room and felt like you had to become someone just to belong? Have you ever noticed how certain environments make you shrink, perform, or tense your body without even knowing why? That's the energetic ego field in action. A distortion layer that tells you, you're not safe to be as you are. The ego's energy is rooted in separation. It says, I must defend, prove, compare, or control. It tries to protect the false identity it built by keeping you in a loop of self-definition. It avoids stillness. It resists surrender. It clings to structure. And most of all, it fears silence. Because in silence, the ego loses ground. But here's what's often misunderstood. The ego is not your enemy. It's a survival construct. One that was necessary when you were younger, when you didn't yet know how to regulate your own energy, emotions, and truth. It stepped in to help you fit in, to help you cope. And for a while, it worked. But now you're awakening. And that mask, once useful, has become heavy. It doesn't fit anymore. Energetically, this feels like tension in the body, especially around the jaw, shoulders, and solar plexus. Overthinking, especially in moments of stillness. Emotional reactivity that seems disproportionate. A constant sense of needing to hold yourself together. Fatigue after social interaction or moments of exposure. These are not failures. They're signals. Signs that the ego's grip is loosening and your true self is beginning to emerge. Have you ever experienced a moment, brief, quiet, where the mask slipped off? Maybe during meditation, in nature, after a deep cry, or in sacred intimacy, and suddenly you felt whole, peaceful, present? Not trying, not performing, just being? That was you. Not the energetic mask, not the egoic persona, but the awareness that simply is. The ego cannot be killed or erased. That's not the goal. The goal is integration. To recognize the ego as a tool, not a master. To stop living from the mask and start living from the essence behind it. As your consciousness expands, the energetic layers of the ego begin to dissolve. But they don't go quietly. They resist. They tighten. They flare up with fear. And in those moments, you might question your path. But that's exactly when the breakthrough is near. So what do? You don't fight the ego. You witness it. You breathe through it. You create space around it. And in that space, your true energy begins to shine through. Because your real identity doesn't need a mask. It radiates on its own. It doesn't need to defend. It knows. It doesn't chase validation. It is presence. And it doesn't fracture because it was never divided to begin with. You are not here to destroy the ego. You are here to transcend identification with it. And every time you choose presence over performance, truth over protection, awareness over reaction, the energetic mask gets thinner until one day you wake up and realize you're not hiding anymore. There comes a moment in every awakening, often quiet, often unexpected, when something within you starts to stir. It's not loud. It doesn't always come with fireworks or visions. Sometimes it arrives as a soft discomfort, a question that won't go away, a subtle sense that the life you've been living no longer fits the shape of who you're becoming. This is the moment when the soul begins to question. It may start in the middle of routine, while driving, folding laundry, or scrolling through another familiar loop. Suddenly you feel it, a wave of emptiness, not depression, not sadness, just a quiet knowing that says, this can't be all there is. Have you felt it? That inner pause, where everything you've built starts to feel strange? Where success feels hollow, relationships feel out of rhythm, or your own reflection feels unfamiliar. That's not confusion. That's truth trying to surface. This moment is sacred. It marks the beginning of remembrance, when the soul begins to tug on the threads of your false identity, not to shame you, but to awaken you, to whisper, you are more than what you've been taught to believe. At first, it may feel destabilizing. You might begin to question your career, your goals, your patterns, your beliefs. People may say you're changing. You may feel like you're unraveling. And in a way, you are. But you're not falling apart. You're peeling away everything that was built from fear, survival, and performance. This questioning is not intellectual, it's energetic. It lives in the body before it becomes words. It arises through discomfort, irritation, a longing you can't quite name. You may try to explain it, fix it, or distract yourself from it. But the feeling grows, because the soul is persistent. And once it begins to awaken, it doesn't stop. Have you found yourself walking away from things that once defined you? Not because they're wrong, but because they no longer match your frequency? Have you started to feel exhausted by pretending, by shrinking, pleasing, performing? That is the soul saying, this isn't who we are anymore. This process can be lonely. The people around you might not understand. You may not understand. You may grieve parts of your life that once felt solid. But the grief is not failure. It's the release of illusion. And with every question the soul asks, a layer peels back, revealing what was always there beneath the surface, your essence. The ego fears this process. It wants answers. It wants clarity, certainty, control. But the soul moves in spirals, not straight lines. It doesn't give you definitions. It gives you presence. It calls you to slow down, to listen, to trust the inner unraveling, even when it makes no sense. And this trust becomes a turning point, because once the soul begins to question, you can no longer live in unconsciousness. The job that drained you becomes unbearable. The relationships that dishonor you become impossible to maintain. The habits that kept you numb start to fall apart. Not because you're broken, but because you're waking up. This is the path of truth. Not comfort, but alignment. Not escape, but return. The questions themselves become medicine. Who am I beneath this role? What do I value if no one else is watching? What version of me am I keeping alive because I'm afraid to let go? And slowly, the answers begin to arrive. Not in the mind, but in the heart, in the body, in the quiet space between your thoughts, in the resonance of your truth rising to the surface. So if you are in this moment, if you're questioning, shifting, shedding, know this: you are not lost, you are not broken, you are not late. You are in the moment where the soul starts to remember, and that remembrance will change everything. What your real self feels like. Your real self is not something you have to create. It's something you return to. It's not a personality you build, a title you earn, or a version of you that comes after healing. It is already here, beneath the noise, beneath the roles, beneath the mental chatter. Quiet, steady, radiant. But most people don't recognize their true self because they are too busy trying to be someone. From a young age, you were taught to become, to strive, to achieve, to shape yourself into someone acceptable. And in doing so, you learn to disconnect from the part of you that simply is. Not the reactive self, not the social self, but the one who exists even when no one's looking. So what does your real self actually feel like? It feels like peace without reason. It feels like spaciousness inside your chest, even in uncertainty. It feels like those rare moments when you're fully present and nothing needs to be fixed, earned, or explained. Have you ever stood in nature and felt completely still inside, like you were part of something bigger than thought? Have you ever held someone you love, and in that silence, everything made sense? Have you ever sat in meditation or just stared at the stars, and something deep inside whispered, "This is what I've been searching for"? That's not a mood. That's not coincidence. That's your true self coming to the surface. Your real self does not need to be liked. It does not seek validation. It does not panic when plans change or when people misunderstand you. It is the part of you that witnesses without judgment, the one who is always aware, even when your mind is in chaos. You've felt it before, in the space after the tears, in the quiet after the breakdown, in the breath after surrender. That deep exhale, that internal stillness, that sense that you've never truly been lost, just distracted. And yet, we forget. We fall back into the stories, the roles, the noise. We mistake productivity for purpose. We confuse reaction for identity. We chase freedom without realizing that freedom is the truth we already carry inside. But here's the key. Your real self cannot be thought into existence. You cannot access it through logic or effort. You can only feel it through presence. When the mind softens, when the body is grounded, when you're not trying to be anyone, and you allow yourself to simply be. The more time you spend in this space, the more familiar it becomes. You begin to recognize the signs. Your energy feels clean. Your choices feel aligned. Your voice sounds like truth, not performance. You stop over-explaining. You start listening more than reacting. You begin to choose peace over control. And you begin to notice your real self is softer than the ego, but infinitely stronger. It does not shout, but it never wavers. It does not manipulate, but it always guides. It doesn't force change. It magnetizes it through alignment. Have you begun to sense this version of yourself emerging? It often arrives in the most unexpected places. In rest, not effort. In stillness, not stimulation. In letting go, not holding tighter. Because your true self isn't out there. It's not in a better body, a perfect relationship, or a spiritual title. It's right here, in this breath, in this moment, in this presence. And every time you drop beneath the noise, every time you breathe instead of react, every time you choose truth over image, you come closer, not to something new, but to what you've always been. Letting go is not weakness, it's not failure, and it's definitely not loss. In truth, letting go is one of the most powerful acts of remembrance, because every time you release what you're not, you come home to who you've always been. But here's the paradox. Most people spend their entire lives clinging to identities that exhaust them. Identities formed in fear, shaped by survival, and reinforced by a world that rewards performance over presence. And even when those masks begin to hurt, we hold on. Why? Because we've mistaken the mask for our face. We've mistaken the role for our worth. We've mistaken the pain for our personality. Have you ever stayed in a version of yourself just because it was familiar? Have you noticed how uncomfortable it feels to let go of something, even when you know it's not who you really are anymore? That discomfort is the space between the false self unraveling and the real self emerging. And in that space, there is a sacred invitation: surrender. Letting go doesn't mean erasing your past. It means honoring it and choosing not to be bound by it. It means seeing your coping mechanisms, your habits, your labels, and asking, is this truly me, or is this who I became to survive? It means releasing the need to be understood, because you've stopped needing approval. It means stepping out of the version of you that was created for others, and stepping into the frequency of your own truth. And when you do that, something extraordinary happens. Your energy shifts. The field around you responds. Doors you didn't know were closed begin to open. Not because you forced them, but because you stopped holding the lock. The power of letting go is not in what you lose. It's in what you make room for. When you let go of who you're not, you make space for clarity, authenticity, intuition. You begin to feel lighter, not because life is easier, but because you're no longer carrying the weight of pretending. You begin to breathe more fully, love more honestly, and move through the world with a kind of unshakable presence that can't be taught, only remembered. But it's not always instant. Sometimes, letting go feels like dying, like standing in an empty hallway, no longer who you were, not yet who you're becoming. And yet, this is the portal, the sacred in-between, where you stop performing and start listening, where you stop gripping and start trusting, where you stop asking, who should I be, and start feeling, who am I when I stop trying? Have you felt that space, where you're no longer reacting the same way to the things that used to trigger you, where silence becomes comforting not terrifying, where even without answers you sense that something deeper is guiding you. That's the power of release, because every time you let go of what's not yours, what's no longer aligned, what's been outgrown, you align your vibration with the truth of your being, and from that truth, life begins to meet you differently. Not because it's changed, but because you have. So breathe, loosen your grip, speak the words you've been afraid to say, take the mask off, even if your voice trembles, because the more you let go of who you're not, the more powerfully you become who you are. Beneath every role you've played, beneath every version of yourself you've built to survive, there is something that has never changed. Something that doesn't rise and fall with emotion. Something that doesn't get stronger when praised or weaker when rejected. Something that has always been there, watching, feeling, sensing. That something is awareness. Not the thoughts in your mind, not the emotions in your chest, not even the voice you call you, but the space behind it all, the quiet witness, the one who sees but does not cling, who feels but does not drown, who lives beneath the story, untouched. You are not your fear. You are the one aware of fear. You are not your shame, your doubt, or your patterns. You are the one who has watched them, again and again, longing to be free. And here's the truth. Freedom is not something you chase. It's something you remember. Because what you truly are has never been bound, only covered. Covered by layers of identity, narrative, projection, trauma, conditioning. All of them loud, all of them convincing, but none of them as deep as your true nature. Have you ever had a moment where time seemed to dissolve, and for a second there was just presence? No trying, no defending, no needing, just breath, just being. That's the truth. That's you. You are the stillness beneath the storm, the open sky behind the clouds, the formless presence in which all of life unfolds. This is not philosophy. It's not abstract. It is something you can feel, here, now. Drop into your body. Listen beneath the noise, and you'll feel it, that hum of aliveness that requires nothing to be worthy. It is awareness itself. You do not need to become enlightened. You are the light that has simply forgotten where it shines from. And the more you rest in that awareness, not trying to fix, label, or control, the more you begin to see clearly. You see your thoughts as clouds, not commands. Your emotions as visitors, not identities. Your life as a reflection, not a prison. And from that place, you begin to live differently, not performing, but embodying, not chasing, but receiving, not surviving, but remembering. You may still play roles, the teacher, the parent, the lover, the healer, but now, you know, they are not who you are. They are expressions, temporary, beautiful, sacred, but you remain, always, the awareness holding it all. So if you ever feel lost again, ask yourself, who is the one aware of this confusion? Who is watching this emotion rise and fall? Who am I, when I stop identifying with thought? And in that silence, you will find truth, not a concept, not a belief, but a felt reality. You are not what you think you are. You are not what the world told you. You are not even the voice inside your head. You are the presence beneath it all. And from that presence, anything can be healed. Anything can be released. And everything can begin again. Welcome back to yourself.